Are you?
Yeah, I need to leave. So yeah, it's easier. I don't want to cut the connection. Are you okay, David, doing it?
So I've done it. Can people hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And that's
the rest of the recording started. Yep.
Great, thank you. We're ready to start the meeting. Do you want to do the introductory statement, Chair? Or are you happy for me to do it?
If you could do it, please.
Okay. Welcome everyone to this meeting of the East Lothian Integration Joint Board's Audit and Risk Committee on the 3rd of December 2024. This meeting is being held remotely. The meeting is being recorded and will be made available via the Council's website in order to allow the public access to the democratic process in East Lothian. East Lothian Council and NHS Lothian are data controllers under the Data Protection Act 2018, and data collected as part of the recording will be retained in accordance with the record retention policies of the Council and NHS Lothian. And the webcast of this meeting will be publicly available for up to 6 months. I'll now move on to the roll call. Before I do so, are there any, I don't think there are any apologies. I think everyone's here, I was expecting. Yeah. So I'll just do a roll call of committee members present. Patricia Cantley.
Present.
Thank you. Jeremy Finlay.
Present.
Elizabeth Gordon.
Present.
Thank you. And David Binney. Is David here? Oh,
No.
I thought I saw him. He's not here. Okay. Thank you. Do any members have any declarations of interest? No.
No.
Thank you. We're now ready to move on to the business, Chair.
Okay, if we can move to item 1, which is the minutes of the meeting on the 24th of September. Can I ask that everyone has considered these and consider them to be a correct record, first of all? Happy to accept them as a correct record then. Yep, thank you. And item 2 is the Joint Board Annual Audit Report, and I believe it's Mr. Boyd that's presenting. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. In front of you, you have our annual external audit report for the year ended 31st of March 2024. For members, you'll recognise this report as similar to previous years in terms of its format and layout. Essentially, it reflects the work we've undertaken and conclusions reached for our audit appointment for the year ended March 2024. Ultimately, it's split into 2 key areas: the audit of the financial statements, as well as the conclusions over the wider aspects of our public audit, covering financial management, financial sustainability, vision leadership and governance, use of resources to improve outcomes, and conclusions on the extent to which the IJB demonstrates best value. In terms of the audit of the financial statements, I think the key message is that we plan to issue an unmodified opinion on the annual accounts. Essentially, we're concluding that the draft financial statements that are being proposed for signing today are free from material misstatement. Our annual audit plan and our annual audit report outline what we mean and define what we mean by material, but it's essentially the value attributable, what we would attribute to being would influence the users of the accounts. Essentially, we're saying it's a clean bill of health in terms of the financial statements. The accounts themselves, the draft accounts were of a good standard, and there were only minimal required changes to those in terms of some minor format and presentational items. So really passing on my thanks to the finance team, particularly David, for his help and support during the audit. The accounts are obviously signed later than our statutory target date, That's predominantly because of our challenges in terms of audit resourcing. As we recover from a period of COVID-19, we are hoping to work with management to try and gradually bring those timescales in line with the statutory sign-off dates by the end of September. So looking to work with management over the coming years to bring those dates in. In terms of our work over our wider scope or the wider aspects of public audit, you'll see in our annual report we've outlined the key challenges that the IJB faces in relation to financial sustainability. We've highlighted there the cumulative projected deficit of 14.7 million by 2029, and we've highlighted that in 24-25 the IJB is relying on its use of reserves to meet the financial challenges in year. We've highlighted the importance of the IJB working with its key partners, the Health Board and the Council, to really set the strategic direction as to how health and social care activity can be delivered in the area in a sustainable manner. In terms of our other dynamics, we've found that the IJB's performance maintained a relatively strong performance, but there were aspects of some of the performance reporting that could be enhanced, particularly as part of the annual report and accounts pack. We also highlighted that the IJB were still to adopt a best value framework, but recognised that there were plans to implement that in the near future. That was really the kind of key aspects. Just finally, for me to confirm my ongoing independence of the IJB, I've included in there our final audit fee for the year, which was remained at the level proposed in our annual audit plan, and essentially the baseline fee issued to the IJB at the outset of the audit. But happy to take any questions on the annual report itself or the wider audit.
Thank you for that, Mr. Boyd. Can I open it up to colleagues for any questions, first of all? No? Okay, if I might ask, so I note in your report that you highlight that some of the recommendations from the previous year were only partially met. Do you consider that there's any particular risks for us going forward from any delays in that work?
So in terms of our actions that are included within the appendix, what we identified that there was work underway. There are clearly areas where there is a residual risk where issues haven't been identified, matters haven't been closed. For example, the importance around the long-term planning and the five-year financial plan. However, from the work performed, I've got assurance that that work is in flight, and essentially it would be work in progress, and therefore the risk should be addressed in due course. As part of our ongoing audit work, we'll continue to follow up these recommendations. We essentially follow them up until they are satisfactorily closed. It would really be a decision for the IJB around what the residual risk position is, and whether or not they were comfortable with the ongoing action taken by management.
Okay, thank you for that. Anyone from management want to make any comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, excuse me. Thank you for John's comments. Actually, as a slight aside, the point about the fee, because I remember asking what was the point about that, and the point is that the they work out how many days it's going to take to do the audit, and then they set the fee accordingly. If there are more complicated things or if issues come up, then the fee obviously has additional charges are incurred. So in a kind of strange way, the fact that we haven't spent any more money in the fee is a good thing. I think we recognise the financial challenges, and we recognise where we are at the moment. We just had a UK budget. Everybody knows that. We're getting a Scottish budget today. There are significant pressures across the system. I mean, Audit Scotland produced a report as long ago as this morning, which was challenging some of the government's current financial planning models, which aren't perhaps perfect. And that way, you know, setting 1-year budgets, making significant allocations to the health system, for example, during the financial year, it makes it difficult to build longer term plans. So I absolutely accept all of John's points. And I know the IJB's worked very hard on that. And of course, colleagues here will know we have these financial workshops where we sort of hammer a lot of this stuff through and try and make sure that we understand it. So I guess I'm just reflecting that I agree, but at the same time, there are other challenges.
Okay, thank you, David. Fiona.
Yeah, just coming in on the risk element. So I suppose maybe it's wider than the question that's been asked. I suppose it's just making sure as an IJB that we are noting the risk in our registers, but also sharing that knowledge of around risk impact with our partners. And that's something I think we've done a lot of work on, and just making sure, David and I, making sure that we've had the correspondence with colleagues like Sarah Fortune, Craig Marriott, and again just some of our development sessions of where to next, and sharing that. So we don't, I suppose it's trying to, yes, the risk is ours, but we're not holding it and not rather than sharing it. So I suppose it's that, which is probably another layer, John, to your point, but I suppose that's important.
I think that is useful though to highlight, you know, obviously David and Fiona highlighting slightly different aspects of it, but it is a very complex environment that we're working in, and we're not entirely in control of all the levers to pull, etc. at the same time. So I think that's fair enough. Anyone got any other questions on this paper? Fiona?
It's not on this paper, but I suppose it's on that point when we are highlighting it. I just have come off a CRAG meeting, which is largely focused on delays and collective assurance. But I suppose, again, even in my role as Chief Officer, raising and flagging the impact IJBs, decisions, all the wonderful, we're here to try and improve the delayed discharges, but balancing it with the reality of actually what it's like in East. So I gave the example of our occupancy, our delays, but actually we are going to make decisions. Our partners have got challenges, and all of that impact, again, just I suppose making sure you are sharing that information that just is not held in East Lothian and nobody knows about it. So I suppose it was just another added. Sorry, Lynn.
That's okay. I think it just highlights how complex it all is though, Fiona. Thank you. Okay, so are we content then to note this report? Nodding heads, thank you very much. And thank you, John, for your time on this and for your report. And obviously to David for all the work that goes into assisting with that as well. Can we move now to item 3, which is the audited annual accounts? And David King, over to you.
Thank you very much. Well, very, very quick recap then. So we closed the financial year April, May of 24. And then by June 24, we publish a draft set of annual accounts. Now, that draft set of annual accounts then goes to our external auditor, our appointed auditors, who work their way through it and make comments, and we amend the document slightly to reflect upon their comments. And at that particular point in time, we arrive at a sort of presentation thing, and I always think there are two parts to it. So there's the annual accounts themselves, and these annual accounts are different from the draft ones that we issued originally in that they now include the report of the external auditor as part of that document. So that document is now whole and can be signed by the various officers of the IJB. And the second thing, which is why I put John first, is I think and I appreciate this. This is exactly what we're supposed to do, but I always think it's worthwhile just reiterating that the auditor has an absolute ability to talk to the committee about the annual accounts before any of the officers, in this case Fiona and I, have said a word. And I think that was really quite important. So that's why it's sort of done in that order. And you've heard John's point of view, and I'm very grateful, A, for all the work that his team has done and working with me, and B, for, well, being easy to work with. I mean, some of these discussions can be a bit interesting, but it's been very positive. We've always kept the ball rolling along. And I think you can see at the end the recommendations that they made at the very end of the previous document, i.e. the external auditor report. We accept all of these recommendations, and I don't think there's anybody here who doesn't recognise that these things, as the chair says, are complicated. We continue to work on that, and clearly there's a whole lot of other stuff will happen in the future. So having done these things, then what we now have is a set of annual accounts. And at this particular point in time, I hope the committee agrees that set of annual accounts, having listened to John, is ready for publication, if you like, or can be approved and then signed off. So what this is really asking this committee to do is to approve it. And then having approved it, it will be signed by Shameen, by Fiona, myself and John electronically. I don't know if we'll do it this afternoon or tomorrow, but it doesn't alter the fact it will be done as quickly thereafter as possible. But that decision sits with this committee. And then having made that decision, and I hope you will agree to approve it, we will then report back to the IJB as part of the December reporting and say, look, you know, had this discussion, made the things, the documents are available in, so other members of the IJB may look at them if they wish. So really, that was all I wanted to state here, if that's okay.
Thank you for that, David. I'll open it up to any questions. Elizabeth.
Thanks. This question isn't actually about the accounts themselves, it's more about this process. I just wanted to check, because obviously if we approve them today, do you think that if this was to be, this could be open to criticism by any other members of the board, or is this from an audit perspective perfectly, I don't know if the auditors have a view, or is this just because of the situation we find ourselves in with you retiring, David? Obviously there's a very sensible reason for it, but I just wondered if there was a view on that. Thanks.
Well, it's not, excuse me, we're doing it because I am retiring, but not because I am retiring. My understanding, and I'd like John and Duncan's advice on this, but my understanding of the rules are that some bodies get their audit risk committees to sign off the annual accounts, and some bodies put it to the body. Historically, we have, I can't remember if we've done a mixture of both, but my understanding is that this committee is entitled to make that approval. And I would ask John or Duncan just to comment. I mean, they know a great deal more about it than I.
Duncan.
Yeah, happy to come in there. I'm fairly sure that the terms of reference allow for this committee to do that. We've done actually the opposite in the past, where I remember during COVID times, because the Audit and Risk Committee wasn't meeting, it went directly to the IJB board without going through Audit and Risk Committee. But my understanding is that it's one of the committees, so either it needs to go through the board or it needs to go through the Audit and Risk Committee, and that's delegated authority there. So from a governance perspective, it meets those requirements from that perspective, and is not that unusual for organisations. People do it in different ways, but normally it would come through the Audit and Risk Committee, and then it would go to the board as a final approval, but the key scrutiny would happen at Audit and Risk anyway.
John.
Yeah, thanks. As Duncan and David had said, different organisations follow different practices. Generally, what we see within local authority is because the unaudited accounts are published on the council's website, and there's actually a statutory requirement for them to be published unaudited. They tend to have went through usually actually a council approval prior to the audit, and therefore the audit committee then oversees the approval of the audited version, because they obviously take responsibility for overseeing the external audit and the external audit annual report. So that's common in local authority. In health, it's slightly different. where normally it would go to the audit committee and then subject to the full board approval. That's predominantly because it's the first time the board would have seen the annual accounts. So what we see in IJBs is a bit of a mix, and it's probably just reflected on the nature of the IJBs. It's probably worth just having a quick check of the terms of reference just to make sure that they allow for the approval, but it's not uncommon for it to be approved following the audit committee.
Okay, I'm conscious that Duncan said he was fairly certain that it fitted, but it probably would be right, as you suggest there, John, maybe just to check the terms of reference. If someone could do that just now, please. Jeremy.
Yes, thank you. Just in terms of detail and for my own clarification.
Oh, sorry, Jeremy. Can I maybe just check back in with Elizabeth that she's content with where we are with that question that she had?
Yeah, I think as long as that we check the terms of reference and we're confident that that's fine, then I'm happy. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, Jeremy.
That's okay. Just looking at the balance sheet, just my own clarification, can someone remind me what short-term debtors are and why they've fallen so much?
It's pretty well, I'm sorry, it's pretty well the way we handle the reserves. And the IJB doesn't have any assets. So the short-term debtors is just money being moved around between the two partners. And so as I say, it's just a function of shuffling money around the system. One partner happens, I mean, I'm not being ironic, I assure you, one partner happens to have it at a particular point in time, but it belongs to the IJB, so it has to be shown. Then the next year, something completely different might have happened. So I'm afraid there's nothing particularly logical in it. It's just the way that things fell out at the end of the financial year.
Okay. I only asked because having been in business, the term short-term debtors has a very different meaning, but thanks.
Yes, I absolutely. Yes, it would be all about, outstanding invoices and all that kind of stuff. We do not invoice the partners, nor do they invoice us. So this is really just about shuffling the money around the accounts in the appropriate place, so that there's no issue there. I mean, I'm afraid that we have to have a balance sheet, but I fear it doesn't mean a great deal.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone got any other questions? No. I think Duncan is actively doing some research as we speak. Can I maybe ask, in terms of the report, I think it's on page 9 of the report, I've picked up around the quick service. I just wondered how we're measuring the impact of the service in terms of care pathways as opposed to not just appointments.
David, do you want to come in on that? Yes.
David?
Sorry, wrong David.
Other David.
No, David, if you want to come in, you're more than welcome to, but we have a number of kind of, like with all of our services, that kind of metrics that we measure for Quick in terms of patient feedback. We also have things in terms of feedback from our GP colleagues in terms of the practices that Quick supports, and we try and triangulate that with the financial information, with the quality information, and also the staffing information. Very happy out with you to kind of show some of that and to kind of share some of that in terms of what that looks like and some of the information that we have been gathering. I think it's worth referencing. We have changed maybe the model of Quick, and we've moved to direct access, in part of the reason for trying to give better quality or access to patients rather than having to phone their general practitioner, then be put through to the Quick service, so that actually patients can contact us direct. For part of that reason, in terms of the feedback, we have been engaging with the 4 practices who are supported by Quick, and also one of the other practices in that location about actually other things that we can do in terms of that would make the access better. And we do have some stuff in terms of patient feedback that I'm very happy to share around that as well.
Okay, so in broad terms then, does that mean with the change of how people are accessing, that there is that loop, there is still that loop back in terms of clinical care?
So just describe what you
Just
mean
in
there,
terms of
sorry.
because the referral's not coming through the GP service, but there is still a way that the information gets back to the GP.
Yeah, so we use the same systems where the information is transferred and have access to that. We also obviously have GPs within the quick service, and if there are particular things that come up that are of clinical concern, then there's a way of being able to process that and share that information so that it doesn't operate in isolation of the rest of the services for patients.
Okay, that's great. And knowing me as you do around how we measure effectiveness of things, my next question is on page 10 of the report, and it's around the carer strategy. Obviously, it's just a note there saying that it was published in June 23 and guiding activity over the next 3 years. I just wondered how we're capturing what the impact of that strategy is likely to be, so in terms of its aims and its outcomes. Fiona.
Yeah, I can pick up this with Laura Kerr, but we obviously have a carers lead, and there's metrics we are using. One, the engagement that we have around carers, but also then the impact of, well, if we didn't have that, where would these people go, and does it fall then onto more kind of statutory services? So if you're content, Lynn, I don't want to waffle on, and I would rather get more of the kind of the clear detail, but we will have that, and Laura Kerr and her team will be able to help out. But the measures that we are taking around kind of understanding demand and using appropriate pathways, including how do we best support carers, we I guess we're doing that through our engagement work, but we're not seeing any kind of knock on just now around that, you know, that presentation from us not supporting. But let me get more detail, because I feel that would be more helpful, and then we can share it with the group.
Yeah, that's helpful. I suppose my last question was around, is sort of related to that, and is because we're working in an area where the demographics are changing, and obviously that has an impact on some of what we're experiencing in terms of needs and demands. I'm just wondering if we've got anything in place that helps us to model projections that might help us in terms of some of the budgetary kind of decisions that we look towards.
I guess, yes and no. We do a lot with kind of population growth, and we in public health, and I know both partners use some of that information, and we model it out. I suppose what we have, I mean, there's further work required in this. I suppose what we are recognizing, people talk about population growth a lot, but actually we're able to mitigate quite a lot. So when we talk about, well, some of our finances, it's because of increased demand on service. Well, yes and no, costs gone up, so it kind of masks that need. So some of that we're unpicking, as well as our response around, actually we are holding and supporting people with not increasing our care, but just in the methods that we're doing. So the care at home huddle, the daily huddle, all of that. But that modelling, we're relying on partners really to help feed that information, and nationally what we're getting through national groups as well. We're picking up.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a comment from Duncan on the scheme?
I'm just looking to see if the financial regs have been changed since the 2015 ones, because the 2015 financial regulations would specifically require the board to sign off on the accounts and to approve the accounts. So I'm just having a further look as to whether anything's amended that since then.
Okay. So I suppose at this point, in terms of business of this committee, we maybe need to just move on, but come back to
Chair,
whether we can. Yep.
I've just had a look at the terms of reference for the committee. And under the section on financial reporting, it says to review the annual statements of accounts, specifically to consider whether appropriate accounting policies have been followed and whether there are concerns arising from financial statements or from the audit that need to be brought to the attention of the IJB, to consider the external auditor's report to those charged with governance on issues arising from the audit of the accounts, and then to report to those charged with governance on findings. It doesn't specifically say approval of the accounts in the terms of reference, but I know that we have done, I do recall at least once in the past we did, the committee did approve the accounts on behalf of the IJB. What I'm not sure of is whether that required the prior approval of the IJB to delegate that responsibility.
Okay, I suggest we leave Duncan to continue research. Can we move to item 4 in the meantime, and we'll come back to what the final situation on this one is? Is that okay, folks? Yeah. Okay, so we can move to item 4, which is Q3 risk register. David King, over to you.
Yeah, we keep on saying sort of review the risk register. What happens is there's a meeting every quarter and we review, we being the Health and Social Care Partnership Management Team, myself and Fiona, review the IJB register on the grounds that, there's enough people in the room to have enough intelligence to deal with all these matters. And then they then move on to review the Health and Social Care Partnership risk register, which I think we presented to this committee before, just as an example of an operational risk register. Anyway, timing was not kind of working because the papers for this committee had to go out before we had that review. So we had that review last Thursday. And what I did was I looked back through the risk register and considering all the various things that had been going on and the various risks, made a couple of changes to dates and sort of corrected something. It was talking about when the directions had been issued in 23, so I updated to show when the directions were issued in 24. So I said in the room, so this is what I've done. Does anybody have any other ideas or thoughts that need to be reflected? And then we can report them verbally back to this committee when it meets. So I'm hoping, David, that you can pick up anything that came out that I miss on the grounds that David's memory is probably a great deal better than mine. So I didn't really have any kind of fundamental changes, but there were two things I think come leaping off the page. One is, of course, what really we've just been talking about, I guess, in a different way, is about the interim CFO. So I finish on the 6th of December. So next week, the IJB does not have a CFO. Now, the integration scheme says the partners must provide a CFO. I can assure you that Fiona, on behalf of the IJB, has been having a lot of very detailed conversations with the partners to make sure this is moved forward as much as is humanly possible. So I'm not 100% sure at this particular point in time where we are and what we are doing, but I guess that will pretty well have to go to the IJB in December. Fiona, sorry.
Yeah, so just an update on that. The advert is out for CFO and linking in with partners because of the section, it's not my area of expertise, but the section 95 officer responsibility with an IJB. David Hood and I met with Sarah Fortune this morning, and she's had some advice from legal and the council, which is helpful, saying we will need to, I think, to legally keep us safe, we will need somebody to be that section 95 officer. With regards to the post that has gone out, we are going out for a full-time for East, and which will be an increase in funding because we were a half-time, and we are taking a paper to the IJB in December. There's an S-bar attached to outlining all the things we've tried and the time we've taken, given and David King's helped us out in the short term, just around how we have tried different options, and that's not worked. So our next step is going out as a full-time post. We don't know what the response will be, so that's the plan. We will take it through the IJB for sign-off, so we're running it both along the same lines, so we don't have a gap. and then looking to the partners to support around that Section 95 and keeping us legally safe for that responsibility. So that's where Craig and Sarah and I need to come together around that support, and that's the latest update I have had. I suppose the risk is, much as we have health or council representation, I cannot speak to the finance papers at IJBs, and how do we get engagement, particularly around some of the work that we've got to do around decisions, progression, without finance support there. And that's what we have flagged to Sarah and Craig, and I've followed it up in emails as well. Hope that helps, Lynn.
It's not the best of positions to be in, but your explanation certainly helps. Yes, thanks. Okay, Elizabeth.
Thanks. I'm not sure if you were maybe going to say more about it, but obviously in the paper there's a proposal, well, not a proposal, a thought that we might want to consider adding to the risk register in this regard. My own thoughts is that we absolutely should. My thoughts are that it should be, the risk is while the permanent replacement is still situation is still unresolved, there's a risk to the IJB, because certainly makes me feel very uncomfortable that we're in this unfortunate position. And obviously, I suppose, the fact that we're now saying it's a full-time post to try and attract interest, I think is a positive step. Obviously, hopefully that's a good use of resources. I'm not sure, maybe David would think that he's been very overemployed and has well, I suppose you've been doing the Midlothian one as well. Yeah, I think we really need to do this, personally. Thanks.
Yeah, what do other people think on that? I mean, that absolutely makes sense to me in terms of that suggestion, Elizabeth, that it has to go on the risk register, especially in respect to the interim arrangements. Yes.
Okay, right. Well, we obviously, I'll as a result of this meeting, I'll write back and get it onto the risk register. So yes, you're right, absolutely, Elizabeth. I was just sort of thinking out loud, and just decided to move forward. Sorry, Fiona, I keep on interrupting you.
Hey, Fiona.
Yeah, I think it needs to be on. It's back to who knew the information when and how was it shared, and also, I suppose, looking to your support as well around kind of pushing that help around the IJB. So yeah, absolutely needs to be on. And
partners with our connections with our respective partners to make that case for the support in the interim and moving things on as quickly as possible. Fiona.
Yeah, so the one thing I was going to say as well, Sarah was helpful around we are going to go out and explore agency options in a short term. And it's something I suppose we all feel uncomfortable with, given that doesn't seem like a very good use of funds, but it's mitigating against the risk. Now, she can access that through the framework that the council has, but I think we do need to go and explore it, since it is such a significant risk. Whether we'll get anybody, and that's for others who are more experts and know what's out there, I don't know. But again, she's clear, and similar with Craig Marriott and Health, they don't have resource currently that they can support, but that might be an option. So that was the other thing that was added.
Yeah, I think given both partners are in the throes of budget considerations, I think that's a particular pinch point that they're not going to have capacity. Okay, anyone else? Jeremy.
Yeah, just to go back to the agency, that question, is there any time limit which we can employ an agency person, i.e. can we only do it for a month or 6 months, or is it technically unlimited?
Yeah, so it'll not be unlimited at all. It would be fixed in review. I suppose it would be tied into recruitment, actually. So we've put the advert out. The likelihood is we're not going to be able to interview until after New Year. So we'll do it with anything. I suspect that's why David came along on the bank, thinking it was a fixed term and it was extended. We just need to review it, because it is an expensive way, but it's back to balancing, mitigating the risk around cost, all of these things, and having it documented. So it won't be unended. It'll be 4 weeks to start with, or yeah, that's how we'll work it through. And the CVs, if we get any back, would have to meet the criteria for what we need.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay,
David?
Sorry.
No, on you go, David.
I do feel rather guilty about this. This is slightly embarrassing, as you can imagine. Right, so we will add that onto the risk register along the lines we discussed. And the second point I noted down in this particular paper was about the National Care Service. And we've spoken about this at considerable length. And during the summer, when we were looking at the stage 2 amendments to the bill, and there were proposals that somehow the IJBs were transmogrified into, I was going to say, this sounds terribly sarcastic, it's not meant to, I don't think I understood the proposals, into local care boards. And that would have obviously created a considerable impact upon this IJB. Now, my understanding from various briefings, I mean, council colleagues will probably have better briefings than I do, is that the NCS has kind of been kicked forward sometime into the future. Now, again, I wasn't entirely sure whether we step this risk down. If there's still a determination to do something, then is it still there? So it was really just kind of in exactly the same way as the Chief Finance Officer, what does the committee think? But I don't think I've done anything with it. I think I might have. So what have I said? I've said it's diminished, but again, I hadn't quite decided whether it should be reduced or increased. And I just wanted a bit of feedback on that particular point.
Elizabeth?
My own thoughts are that the risk probably should stay, whether or not it's at the same level, I'm not sure, but I was wondering whether should we alter the wording of the risk to allude to the uncertainty, because uncertainty is, obviously quite potentially disruptive to future planning. So I was wondering if we should maybe alter it in that sense. Thanks.
Yeah, I think I'd be kind of with you on that as well, Elizabeth, that it's the uncertainty of what happens rather than an impending legislative change that's more of the concern. What level it sits at, I'm not sure. Anyone else got any thoughts?
May I suggest then we do that, and then when we come back here in March, consider whatever level it is currently sitting at, and then you can have a further conversation. And then you've had 3 months more intelligence as to what's happened, budgets and blah, blah, blah. So it's probably a better place. The key point then is it needs to stay on the register. And I like your point very much about uncertainty. I think sort of move from something that's going to happen, it may impact upon us, to something that might happen, and that generates an even other level of uncertainty. So the other thing then is I'm struggling, David, I don't want to sort of put you in the limelight here, but I'm struggling to remember if any other things came out of our conversation last Thursday that we should come back to the committee. David, can you remember anything?
I'm not quite as young as you alluded to, David, so I'm struggling with some of the memories there. We did have a bit of a conversation around some of the target risk levels, and I think we'd picked this up at the last committee. Linda, you'd asked particularly around the kind of, I think it was the financial challenges and the target of medium, and we've definitely had that. We had that conversation last week, and a note on here the risk level is down as high. I think that probably reflects the kind of challenges that we've got and the potential impact on the strategic plan. We did have a conversation as well about the first risk in terms of the accurate financial forecasting, because I think this was a concern that was raised over the last couple of years about the ability to get sufficiently timely and accurate financial information in place to be able to understand whether our financial position was sufficiently robust and timely to be able to allow the IJB and partners to be able to make appropriate decisions. And I think part of that conversation was, I think there's been a huge amount of work that teams have done between East Lothian Council and NHS Lothian. We had the internal audit report that Duncan and his team provided last year. And I think we felt that actually a lot of this financial forecasting has moved forward and is in a better place now than it was perhaps a year ago. However, what we also said is we've got financial risks, or we've got risks in terms of, we've already talked about it, we've got David as Chief Finance Officer stepping down. We've also had a change in our ELC finance support, and I think there are a number of other changes as well that potentially then make that risk still a live risk. So I think we had a bit of a conversation last week saying, actually, is that risk now at a point that we can close it, or actually do we think with the other changes we should keep it open? And I think I'd be interested in people's thoughts, but I think we thought for a time being we should leave it on there. It's on there as a medium risk, and see how things with the personnel changes and how things progress over the next 3-6 months, see how things progress, and then have a further conversation. I think those were the kind of key ones that we had from memory last week, David.
No, you're absolutely right. I had forgotten about discussion. I think in the second point, I was arguing that the stuff that certainly the quality of the information provided to us in forecasting terms that improves significantly since I was here previously. But I take your point. Yeah, I take your point. If you lose somebody who's been here for a while, i.e. a CFO who can sort of, nudge folk and say, oh, are you sure? Then you lose that kind of additional interpretive thing. It's an interesting point. I think it should probably stay on the register on the basis perhaps of continuity, because you're right, we've lost that business partner from the council as well, and that's quite concerning.
I think you're probably right about just keeping it there as a check that we kind of look at it again. Elizabeth?
Thanks. Just wondering, I also support keeping it there, but I'm wondering if we should add the wording to reflect the fact that, as well as potentially not getting accurate financial forecasting, we lack the tools to use that information to the because of if we don't have a permanent CFO, or if we have someone from an agency, they're maybe not going to necessarily understand the information in the way that an experienced person would have. And that seems quite risky, but I don't know if that sits in the risk about the lack of permanent CFO, or if it sits in this one.
I think what David was saying there as well about support at the council side as well, that was something I wasn't aware of, but I wouldn't necessarily be aware of the operational staffing issues, but that combination of the two seems to be a bit of a concern. David?
Yeah, I to come back to Elizabeth's point, I mean, she's right. The way that the council work is completely different way from the health system works, and these two systems are astonishingly idiosyncratic. I mean, they're nothing like a commercial operation, because that's how the public sector works. It is different, and if you don't know these things, you sometimes end up going down rabbit's holes. So that might be a challenge. And to be absolutely fair, it's an operational matter. The council recruited an absolute excellent business partner who contributed a great deal. He got a better offer from somebody else, and off it went. So, I mean, it's one of these things. I'm afraid that people turn over. But there's this whole business about where do our risks start, where do they stop, and what's operational and what isn't. But I certainly think this principle of, if you like, sufficiently, what's the word I'm looking for, informed CF. Or maybe we can have it in both risks is worthwhile investigating. Okay.
That sounds as if we've had a really good rummage around in this risk register this time. So that will be updated for all of those points, which will be really useful. Are we content then with what has been discussed, that that risk register will be updated according to what we've indicated here? Yeah. Okay, thank you. There's no need for a roll, so we're happy to note that report then. Okay. Are we in a position to jump back to item 3 for Duncan's clarification of situation?
Yes, unfortunately, no is the answer to the normal procedure is for the Audit and Governance Committee to review it, and then it passed on to the board for approval. In September 2022, the Audit and Risk Committee did approve the accounts, but that was based on August 2022 agreement by the IJB board to have them signed off by the Audit and Risk Committee, as the timing was known in advance that they needed to sign that off. And there's nothing changed as far as I can tell from the governance documents, unless anybody's got something that I haven't been able to do in that small period of time to suggest that that's changed, I'm afraid. And I'm assuming that the board weren't asked whether they could delegate that authority to the Audit and Risk Committee in any recent meetings.
Okay, John.
So, given just get conscious of David's departure, one option is to potentially seek either approval via email communication to board members, or so either approval of the accounts or approval of delegation to the committee.
Okay. Would we be able to achieve that within the timescale of David finishing?
I think so. I'm not due to
I think we're
finish
gonna
until
have
the end of the week. So if we sent an email around the members of the IJB today explaining the issues, then I'm sure we should get a sufficient number of responses tomorrow. And then, John, we could, if you know, we could then sign, DocuSign it tomorrow. We'll have to, well, Shameen will know because she'll get the email. So we'll pick these things up there. I think we should then formally ask the committee for their approval to allow, formally ask the IJB for their approval to allow the Audit and Risk Committee to approve it, and then then it can be signed, where are we, Thursday or Friday, something like that, and then let's get it out the door.
So just to be clear then, that we're asking IJB to effectively delegate the decision to this committee, and we can come back by the end of the week to have clarified that.
Yeah, and that's then, Duncan, I have a whole, was I here in September? No, I wasn't here in September 20. That then would is what we did in September 22, and therefore there's appropriate precedent for it.
Yes, no, the board can delegate it down, and there was a specific decision made to change the usual procedure. The audited annual accounts for 21-22 would be presented to the Audit and Risk Committee for review and final sign off. So I guess this would be a slightly different ask in terms of just asking the board to go with the decision made in this committee to approve it if they then subsequently approve that the Audit and Risk Committee can that.
Do we have to meet again to do that, or do we?
I am wondering whether, you know, it's a question of whether that approval would go to the chair. So can we ask the board to get the chair of the Audit and Risk Committee to approve?
Yeah. Approve, sorry, so the permit, right, so we're asking the IJB to delegate the authority to this committee. This committee, I think, has agreed that it's happy to approve them, but doesn't think it has the authority to so do. So if the IJB comes back
question yet. We haven't specifically asked
that
question yet.
Horses and carts, but so okay, well, maybe we should ask that question then, if you don't mind, Chair, and then we could take the next steps. Sorry, it's a bit impertinent, but I take my point.
Yeah. Okay, so all things considered, on paper 3, and Clark, if you can just keep me right on this, are we minded to approve the IJB annual accounts, provided that we can get the delegated authority from the IJB?
I think, Chair, initially what might be best to do is, if members are willing to propose and someone else to second an amendment to the recommendations here that we have here, to add in a recommendation perhaps that at the moment it is the committee noted the independent auditor's review of IJB's annual accounts and approved the IJB's 23-24 annual accounts. Perhaps we should do a 3, which is or an addition to the second recommendation noting that this is subject to the agreement of
Yeah.
IJB members. Could one of the members, if you're happy, propose and another second that amendment? And then we can vote on the amended recommendations, if that's okay.
We have a proposer and a seconder.
Yeah, happy to propose, Lynn.
Thanks, Jeremy. Seconder, Elizabeth.
Happy to second.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So the amendment is to recommendation 2, subject to the approval IJB members. Okay, so we
we
can
have to accept the amendment first.
Yeah, we will vote on the amendment first and then vote on the recommendations if the amendment is passed as amended.
Thank you.
Or okay, so first of all, asking members to agree to the amendment to recommendation 2 to acknowledge that the approval of the accounts is subject to the agreement of IJB members. Patricia Cantley.
Agreed.
Thank you. Jeremy Finlay.
Agreed.
Elizabeth Gordon.
Agreed.
Lynn Jardine.
Agreed.
Thank you. That's the amendment approved. And so we now vote on the recommendations as amended. Patricia Cantley.
Agreed.
Thank you. And Jeremy Finlay.
Agreed.
Elizabeth Gordon.
Agreed.
And Lynn Jardine.
Agreed.
Thank you. So that's the accounts approved subject to the agreement of the IJB members.
Thank you, and thank you to Duncan for your digging about in the background, much appreciated, and to Fiona for your quick think, getting us through that. Thank you very much. So we'll get that authority from the IJB as quickly as we possibly can and move that on. Thank you all very much. Item 5 now, quarterly internal audit recommendation follow-up, and that's over to you, Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. Purpose of this report is to inform the Audit and Risk Committee of the internal audit work undertaken in 24-25 to follow up the recommendations made in previous internal audit work. It was agreed by the committee that a report of all internal audit recommendations that should have been completed within the target dates agreed with management would be brought to every Audit and Risk Committee meeting. This report demonstrates that the 15 recommendations due from 4 previous internal audit reviews, 8 are now complete, 4 have been partially completed and are on their way to completion, and 3 have yet to be completed, although most of those are due by January 25 now. The actions partially or not yet complete are shown in Appendix 1, and the revised target dates will be added to the monitoring process and progress reviewed and reported at the next Audit and Risk Committee following the passing of the revised target date. Happy to take any questions on that paper.
Any questions from anyone? Nope. That's fairly straightforward. I look forward to that update in due course. Are we happy then just to note that meeting, that recommendation? Yes. Thank you very much. That concludes all our business today. Just ask everyone to mute your microphones and for David Hood to stop the recording.